And welcome back to the show. Well, there is an album that is about to come out that you guys are going to absolutely love. I've had the opportunity to sit down and take a listen to the brand new Exhorder album, and this is an absolutely amazing album. So we thought we would actually get Kyle Thomas from the band on the phone right now to chat a little bit about this album. So welcome to the program, Kyle.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it. Appreciate everybody who cares one little iota.
Look, mate, there are so many people out there excited about this album coming out, and I've had the chance to sit down and listen to it, and it's an amazing album, so congratulations.
Thank you. We did put a lot of work into it.
So tell us a little bit about that work. Tell us a little bit about what you guys were talking about when you first sat down to start work on this album.
That all kind of began right as lockdown happened during the pandemic. We were out on tour with Overkill with 2 shows remaining, and Bobby Blitz walked over to our bus and said, great news, guys. Everybody's got to go home. Like, oh, no. Yeah, so what we did was we went home, and we were very concerned because we had a lot of dates coming up in 2020 that we were scheduled to go overseas and do some touring, and all of a sudden now it's for the foreseeable future, everything's done. So we just said, you know what, let's just start writing. And we did exactly that. And it took quite some time to get the songs the way we wanted them. But we did that on purpose, not being in a hurry. I don't think there's any point in hurrying an album. I think you should just do the album and let the album happen and unravel as it naturally progresses, and wait until it makes sense to get out and tour and support that album, which is, I mean, this album's been complete since fall of last year. We just have held off on the release until spring because that's when it made sense for us to go out and tour.
How did you find writing during that time with all the lockdowns and everything? Because I found I couldn't write during that time. We had a really strict lockdown here. We couldn't go any further than 5 kilometers from our house and could only go outside for 1 hour a day. I just couldn't write during that time. How did you find writing during that time?
It was easy for me, to be honest with you, because I know a lot of people struggled with the isolation of the pandemic.
Yep.
But for me, for a guy who goes on tour a lot, and when I'm on tour, I'm engaging with a lot of people. I always make sure that I make myself accessible and available to people that appreciate my music, and share conversations, take pictures, sign them memorabilia. I'm not a guy that wants to hide away.
Yep.
But when I get home, I want to hide away. When I get home, the only time I ever really leave my house is to go see my elderly mother, or if my wife or one of my friends calls up and says, you need to get out of the house, let's go do something. Otherwise, to me, lockdown was easy, and I had a lot of inspiration. I had a lot to say. I had a lot that I'd been through. So I found no shortage of inspiration. I know that's circumstantial for people, but for me, it was actually a good thing.
So tell us a little bit about those things. What did you want to say on this album?
Well, continuing in the trend that we started with More in the Southern Skies was the objective ever since we put that album out was we have to make albums that we always dreamed of making. And you learn from the mistakes in the early days, and you don't repeat those mistakes. Ideally, you don't repeat those mistakes. Sometimes it still happens, but we put our minds together in the making of this 4th album, Defectum Omnium. We all agreed that it needed to be an album that we all loved, that we all believed in, and that most importantly was worthy of bearing a title of an Exhorder album.
Yep. So during that time, I read a quote that that you gave somebody else, and you said that the world is a dumpster fire. Was that what was fueling you when you sat down to work on the lyrics for this album, that this world has gone to shit at the moment?
Yeah, it is 100%. This is not a concept album, but it is definitely an album with a theme. And that theme across the board is that the world is in the current state of affairs in the world are absolute trash. And we're the ones that are responsible for that.
Yep. So what was that like, sitting down and writing about that? Did you find that was, I don't know, what kind of emotions were you going through? Were you angry? Did you just want to get this out there into the world so that people could take it as a lesson? What kind of emotions were you going through when you were writing?
Well, I don't want the responsibility or the burden of fixing the problems. Let's get that straight and open and out in the air. I'm not, anything that I'm talking about is not me offering to fix anything or suggesting any cures. Everything that I've written about lyrically on this album is merely observation and my experience. And when I take that and piece it together with the music and we release it, then it no longer belongs to me. It belongs to everyone. So really, the words subjectively should be absorbed by the listener and let them come up with their own interpretation of what it means to them. I know this much. I've had a lot of people come up to me and say, I know what y'all are talking about. I can feel and I agree with what y'all are saying on this album. And that's fine, I think. But that is a question that I always have the same answer for when people say, what does this mean? What does this mean? Well, what does it mean to you? So, like I said, I don't want to bear any responsibility for trying to solve this problem or say that I have any solutions. But I do know this much: if collectively mankind, do not work together to fix the problems that we have, this earth will flush us like a giant turd in a toilet. It certainly will.
Definitely. Now, you mentioned about people coming up to you and talking about lyrics. Your lyrics are always so personal, and it always feels like when you're listening to one of your albums, it's a personal experience. Do you have a lot of people come up to you and talk to you about how they feel when they've been listening to one of your albums, and how do you think people are going to react to this one? Because I found when I listened to this one that there was a beauty with the album, but then I felt angry after I listened to it because I could hear all the points that you were making and knew all of them were true.
Well, good. I mean, I'm glad I'm sorry it made you angry, but I mean, then I guess it worked because, I don't know, like rock and roll should be fun. There should be an element of rock and roll that's just about good times and celebrating and having, a party. But the world is not always a party, and life is not always a party. And that, to me, I don't know, maybe that's because I'm such a fan of Black Sabbath, and as much as I'm a fan of Van Halen, I've always connected with the darker Poe-inspired lyricism that is the style that I have embraced. But it doesn't always have to be bleak. We do have a mild ray of hope at the end of the album with Year 6, but the rest of it's pretty dark and mysterious. So, but think about it. The themes that we're talking about: natural disaster, being divided and conquered as a whole, as a people, being desensitized as a people, the division, putting people on the brink of revolution and war. This is all things, being a victim of predation, suffering abuse, mental, physical. This is all stuff that people go through every day. So I think the themes, even though there's a lot of personal stuff that may have inspired me to write some of these words, I try to write them in a way at least where someone can take them and go, I know what this dude's saying.
Now, we talked a little bit about the writing of the lyrics for this album, but tell us a little bit about the actual recording of the album. Where did that take place, and what was that experience like for you?
We spent a very long time crafting the song structures, the arrangements, the riffs, the final versions of these songs. This is the first Exhorder album, probably since Slaughter in the Vatican, that we knew what everything needed to be when we went into the studio, and there was no experimentation with arrangements or riffs or parts. It was very methodically prepared, and when we went in the studio, it was just bam, bam, bam. We got the drums recorded in a week. We spent the next week and a half recording guitar, rhythm guitar, and then Jason recorded his bass. I went home and recorded my vocals right here in this very room I'm talking to you in, and it was efficient, and it was pleasant, and probably the first time ever in a studio situation where a fist fight didn't almost break out during a recording of an Exhorder album. so we've got that going for us.
Yeah, you do have some new members on board for this album. Tell us a little bit about those new members and what you feel they've brought to the band and brought to this album in particular.
Well, myself, Sasha, and Jason all are returning members, but this is the first album that I've recorded guitars on and written and recorded guitars on. Jason also wrote and recorded guitar in this album. The new guy is Pat O'Brien, and Pat came in, and before we really got to recording the album, we were like, man, do you want to learn these songs and play the rhythm tracks yourself or what? And he listened to the songs. He's like, for the amount of time it would take me to learn this and try to feel it the way you guys are feeling it, he's like, you guys are playing great and you guys wrote the songs, so it makes sense for you guys to play the songs and I just come in and play solos. And that's what happened. And Pat came in and just shredded the solos. He did great. It was fantastic. But yeah, Jason and I did the rhythm guitars, and he's a bass player by nature, but so am I. I was a bass player first. Jason's got a great concept of the job and requirements for guitar versus the job and requirements for bass. Bass should never be treated as a third guitar, and that does sadly happen more often than it should, because the bass has a role in the band, and it has its moments to shine. But when I find that when the bass locks down with the drums, it allows for a lot more space for everything else that's going on in the background. And we also decided on this album to feature the bass a lot more and turn the volume of the bass and make it more present than any other Exhorder album has ever been before. And I think it's paid dividends. This album, I don't think it's a perfect album. I think we got a really great album. I can already think of things I'd rather do next time when we record another one in the production process. But yeah, I think it's all around just a strong album. It sounds good. It's sonically well put together, and we're thrilled with it.
Definitely, and it is, like I said, it's an absolutely amazing album. And for our listeners out there, it comes out on March 8th. But Kyle, what have you guys got planned for the rest of this year? With the album coming out in March, what have you got planned for the rest of 2024?
In April, we're going back out on the road with Violence. We just did a tour of Latin America with them. So we have a short run in the U.S., just 8 shows. And then we'll have a couple of weeks off and go to Europe again for a tour where we're going to be playing some festival dates and some club dates. And most of the club dates we're doing with Nervosa as a co-headline tour.
Yep. And
we're looking forward to that. They're badass. And and the festivals we're playing are, some of them we've played already, some of them we haven't played, but more than anything, summer festival season in Europe is always, just one of the greatest times. And it'll technically be spring when we're there, but everyone's on holiday and having a good time, and we're really looking forward to getting back over there. The festival crowds are great, and I love playing the club shows too. When you've got a room with a 300 capacity room and 200 some odd people in there, and they're up in your face on a Tuesday night, you can't beat that.
Yep. I've got to ask for your fans listening to this show as well, is there any chance that you might have an Australian tour in the not too distant future as well?
That's a good question, and it's the second time I've been asked that today. That is definitely a bucket list item for us, and it has been discussed with management. So eventually we will get there. I didn't think we would ever get to Latin America, and we did. So if we keep thinking about it and keep talking about it, it will eventually happen.
Awesome. Well, mate, to finish off the interview, what would you like to say to people out there before they sit down and listen to this amazing new album on March the 8th?
Well, if you're a longtime fan, thank you for the support. If you're a newbie, welcome to the cult. And we hope everyone likes it. If you don't, that's fine too.
Great.